Thank you, Mark, and welcome to this special edition of Hannity, the Trump Agenda. I'm David Webb in for Sean tonight. President Trump taking aim at allegations of bias at the FBI and blast in the fake news dossier. We'll talk about that in a moment. The president tweeting earlier today, "Wow, at Fox and Friends, dossier is bogus. Clinton campaign, DNC-funded dossier. FBI cannot, after all this time, verify claims in dossier of Russia, Trump collusion, FBI tainted, and they use this crooked Hillary pile of garbage as the basis for going after the Trump campaign." President Trump's tweet appears to be in reaction to reports that during his closed-door congressional testimony, FBI Director or Deputy Director Andrew McCabe failed to specify which portions of the dossier the FBI claims to have corroborated. There's also a report in McCabe plans to retire in 2018 amid mounting criticism from Congress. Constitutional law expert Alan Dershowitz weighing in on the scandal, saying that maybe McCabe should have recused himself for any Clinton-related investigations given his conflict of interest. Watch this.
Well, first of all, everybody tells me who knows McCabe and has worked in the FBI that he's a very decent guy and was an excellent deputy director. Having said that, he should have recused himself immediately from any investigation involving Hillary Clinton because of his wife's connections to Hillary Clinton. When you're investigating a presidential candidate, whether it be Hillary Clinton or President Trump, you have to be Caesar's wife. You have to be above reproach. You have to make sure not only there are no conflicts, but there are no perceived conflicts. Not only is there no bias, but there's no perception of bias. And he didn't pass that test.
And in other big news, the Washington Post now reporting that House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes is talking with other Republican lawmakers about writing a report next year that would expose alleged, I say alleged, FBI corruption. Also tonight, a stunning report from Politico. James Baker, the FBI's top lawyer, was in contact with liberal journalist David Corn of Mother Jones. And he did this in the weeks before the outlet broke the very first news story about the existence of the anti-Trump dossier. Joining us with reaction, core national spokesman and conservative pundit, my friend Niger Innes, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Daily Caller reporter Kerry Pickett. By the way, all friends, great to see you here. Greg, I'm going to go to you first on this, and let's talk about this dossier for a moment. We'll put a pause on the politics and look at what you would do within the process of vetting information given to the FBI, this dossier, before you would put it to use.
Look, the FBI receives a lot of fake documents all the time. It's up to them to vet it. You can't use it in a court of law unless you've verified its authenticity and confirmed its contents. If the FBI used this dossier in an affidavit in support of a search warrant to spy on the Trump associates, that's a fraud on the court. That's a crime. But you back up several months, and apparently this dossier was also used to launch the Trump-Russia investigation. And they apparently did little or nothing in the way of verifying its contents. So think about this. Funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee, which, by the way, is a crime under the Federal Election Campaign Act, they used this document to then spy and launch an investigation on Hillary Clinton's political opponent. It's beyond the pale of criminal negligence. And some of the people who did this, including perhaps Comey, McCabe, James Baker, Peter Strzok, and others, should be held accountable criminally if appropriate.
All right, Greg, you're talking about this legal aspect, and the process is important. Kerry, the process, however, on the Hill is a little different. You're down there every day talking to the congressmen and senators, so the political aspect of this comes into play. Given what Greg just said, given that Comey admitted that he leaked information, which also is an issue that you've talked about before, Greg. What about the dossier and the use of this in the congressional point of view?
Well, what's interesting here, David, is that anytime I have gone to the Hill and spoken to the lawmakers that are leading these investigations, whether in the Senate or on the House side, you've had Democrats, for example, who have been preparing almost for, and they will never say this publicly, but they've been essentially preparing for what could be an impeachment. Because anytime I have gone up to them and asked them, well, what about the conflict of interest here? What about the Podesta group? What about the issue that the dossier is not verified? The answers have always been, I haven't heard about that yet, or that's not important. On the Republican side, however, you go up to them and say, well, what about, say, the Donald Trump Jr. emails and so on and so forth? They've been more on the defensive, looking to say what can they do to defend Donald Trump to make sure that he doesn't get impeached. And remember, how did this start? This started off with, oh my goodness, the Russians ended up meddling in our elections. We have come so far from that, David.
All right, so that's the Hill view, the legal view. Now turning to Niger Innes, our friend out there in Las Vegas. Big gambling out of Democrat quarters, Niger. Kind of fits your town of Las Vegas. But the media has been carrying this, be it Greg's points about the legal aspect of this. We've talked about the process here, I think, more than I've seen on most media, and Greg explained that. Kerry looks at it at the Hill and what they're proposing. What about the media's handling of this?
The media, the establishment media, outside, of course, of Fox News, which I actually don't consider to be establishment, has been egregious in their silence. The Washington Post has this on the masthead, democracy dies in darkness. Well, no, actually, democracy died in darkness with the creation of this dossier. You know, for these never-Trumpers out there and these left-wing folk that hate Trump and suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, I just want them to think about this hypothetical analogy. All right, it's 2008. We all jumped into a time machine. It's 2008. And the John McCain for President campaign prepares a dossier using a former British spy and using intelligence gathered on Senator Obama by Israeli intelligence. That information, that dossier then, is passed off to the Bush Justice Department and/or FBI, and they use this dossier to not only wiretap Senator Obama, but to launch an investigation on Senator Obama. The outrage would be deafening. They would be calling for John McCain to not only be impeached, but be given the death penalty. And so the deafening silence by the establishment media, and the fact is, it's more than deafening silence. They are actually going along with the talking points on supposed Russian collusion based on a dossier, and their entire case is built on a house of cards.
All right, so, we'll stay on the facts here, Greg. Let me go back to you on this. And, who can be charged? Because in the end, whether it's the scenario that Niger used, which is a scenario, or the reality, more to the reality of what's happening now, you talk about how you cannot produce fraudulent documents to a court. Right. A judge can hold you in contempt. Who can be charged in this scenario, in your opinion?
Well, you can start with the people who appear to have exonerated Hillary Clinton for political purposes. That would be obstruction of justice. If that involved Peter Strzok, who apparently changed the critical wording in the exoneration statement, you might also include McCabe as well as James Baker. We just don't know. Congress needs to get to the bottom of it. Wish there were a second special counsel to investigate Clinton, Comey, Lynch, McCabe, Baker, Strzok.
Then you have John Orr, his wife, who worked for Fusion.
Bruce Orr, yeah.
Bruce Orr, rather, his wife. You've got Andrew Weissman. Another. There's a cacophony of problems here in the sound that's coming out.
Which is exactly why you need a second special counsel. I'm not sure that Jeff Sessions of the Department of Justice, with so many Obama holdovers still there, is capable of actually conducting a fair, objective, neutral investigation. I think there needs to be a second special counsel, and there's more than enough reason and evidence to demand one.
All right, Kerry, so, before you... We don't need the Constitution explained anymore, at least not on this show. Sure. To the audience, about what it takes for impeachment. But you were talking about charges, potential charges, or an idea of who could be charged, and back to Washington, D.C. and impeachment and the politics of this. We're ending the year and starting a new year. Is this going to change for the Democrats in Washington?
I got to tell you, as far as a special counsel being called, right now you already have members of Congress calling for an investigation into the corruption right now in the DOJ into the FBI, looking to purge the problems going on over at the FBI. So I just can't see a special counsel or second special counsel being called right now.
Except the problem is you can't investigate yourself. The FBI is a division of the Department of Justice, and if the corruption extended beyond the FBI into the Department of Justice, with so many people still there, you can't trust them to investigate themselves, which is why I've long argued for a second special counsel. And in fact, members of the House Judiciary Committee have sent a letter to the Attorney General demanding a second special counsel just for this.
Something that Darrell Issa actually has called for as well.
Yes.
All right, so let's bring Niger back in this. Again, Niger, big gamble for the Democrats. You're hearing your fellow panelists talk about this legal perspective, political perspective. But, you know, if they were to go to a special counsel, and given the IG's reports that have come out, do you think a special counsel brings us there, or does it prolong and delay the process and the constant back and forth partisan politics, which by the way, hinders the president's agenda?
If you have a choice of firing Robert Mueller and ending that special counsel as opposed to bringing on a second special counsel, I lean heavily towards bringing on the second special counsel. Look, Mueller and the Democrats are not going to stop with this investigation. A person recently said, I forget who the commentator said it is merely just the beginning of the or the end of the beginning. So I think this is what Mueller's investigation is going to continue. It's going to go long past 2018. So I think you need a select and distinct special counsel that can examine the corruption within the FBI and examine how Hillary Clinton partisans, Democrat partisans, refuse to investigate her email and her emails being hacked by foreign entities. I mean, talk about collusion, and the fact that they did nothing to the Clinton campaign and to Hillary Clinton herself, except for, you know, smack her on the wrist. That needs to be investigated, as well as what I think is the most egregious, what we've all been talking about, which is active collaboration, it seems, between a presidential campaign of one party, a sitting government in power, presidency in power, to wiretap a presidential candidate. I mean, my God, I think that's a little bit bigger than even breaking into a hotel room in Watergate.
All right, so let's take that idea to the protection of citizens with Niger, and we're going to go around the table on this one for about 30 seconds each. Greg, to you, whether it's wiretapping, what is potentially, who could be charged. When it comes to special counsel, is there anything that can be done prior to that? Is there anything that the Inspector General can do within the FBI or the whistleblower issue, which is on the table, to actually bring this out? The
Inspector General can only make findings, which can turn into a referral for prosecution, but generally they don't do it. The problem with the IG is they're rather toothless, always have been. It's a historical fact. What you need is a prosecutor. And again, I don't think there are people that I would have confidence in the Department of Justice to ferret out criminality among themselves or the FBI.
So, Kerry, is there anyone on both sides sitting down there in D.C. that you hear from that you say, you know what, they would lead a straightforward investigation into this, a finding of fact, as Greg talks about?
David, as far as I can see right now, that they are simply looking to circle the wagons of their own parties. In this case, Republicans looking to protect Trump and Democrats looking to go after Trump. That's all that's going on right now.
All right, we've got to pause it there, but never a pause for our friends right here. Niger Innes out in Las Vegas, Greg Jarrett here in the studio, and Kerry Pickett. Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year, folks.
All right, we're starting off on a day right after Christmas, right back into the tough news. Coming up, President Trump, he's having a very successful year in office, but you wouldn't know that if you only listen to liberal mainstream media. We'll show you some of the most extreme, and I do mean extreme, examples of liberal media bias. Stay with us as this special edition of Hannity continues.